Dalton, Riley, Wolves and Wagers. First win away from Target Center, Ryan. I kind of want to go back in time to the last time the Timberwolves started 6-2. Can you guess what year that was?
Yeah, I saw the lineup. It was like what, 2001, 2 or something like that.
Yep, 2001, 2002. They started 6-0 and actually started 10-2 and ended up winning 50 games that season. I think if you win 50 games this year, you're top 4 seed in the West. But I also want to look at a couple other seasons as I was going back in time. 17-18, they started 2-3 with Jimmy and then won 5 straight. So that's 7-3. Not a bad start. That was a solid season. They were 3 seed pretty much all year before Jimmy got hurt. 13-14, K-Love, Peck, Rubio, my guy Kevin Martin. They started 7-3. I think they only won 42 games that year. But do you remember the 09-10 team? We were both pretty young, so I don't remember this, right? They won the first game of the year and then went on a 15-game losing streak. They ended up winning 15 total games that year. So thank the goodness that was not in our prime, and we get to kind of talk more about Cat and Ann tonight.
Yeah, it was tough being a Wolves fan when we were young, watching some of them bad teams. I know, you're a couple of years older than me, so you were always excited for those K-Love squads with Kevin Martin. That signing, you were going crazy for that, and I didn't really have an understanding of NBA hoops at that time. But yeah, they mentioned that. Jim Peterson mentioned that on the broadcast yesterday. He's like, their best start since, like you said, was 13-14 with that team. And I'm like, man, best start in 10 years. That must have been that K-Love team. But, fantastic basketball game for the Wolves. You got to win the ugly ones. It wasn't pretty by any means, but at the end of the day, a 7-point win against a quality opponent, you can't complain at all. It's, those Popovich teams, they're tough to beat. I get it's, the Spurs aren't supposed to do a ton this year, but they could be a sneaky team. They've beat the Suns twice, I think now, right? So pretty good game for the Wolves. Their stars came out to play. So nice from Ant and Cat to show out, especially Cat continuing to build some continuity. So I liked what I saw from Cat and Ant.
Yeah, there was one point in the game that I really want to talk about. I think it was like around the 8-minute mark in the second quarter. Cat's driving baseline and missed that kind of lay-in, but I think he was fouled. Mm-hmm. And Cat sprints back, has that great defense at the rim that leads to a Mike Conley bucket. That stuff needs to happen more consistently throughout this regular season and throughout the playoffs. And if Cat can play at a level like this, I think Timberpups are up there on the power rankings, right?
Yeah, there was still some whining and complaining from Cat as far as like about the fouls, but it didn't seem like it was nearly as bad as it has been. So maybe he finally just flipped a switch within one day or whatever that it's been since their previous game and realized that he's not going to get the call. Maybe when he was rewatching the film and if he was hearing the broadcast, Jim Peterson and Michael Grady, they were talking about how you're not as likely to get the call when you complain as much as Cat does, right? Like all the way back, harping on officials instead of running back on defense. So maybe he's realized, okay, let me just get back and then play some hard, basketball, and they'll reward me for playing the way I do, and then eventually he'll get to the line more. So maybe that's what flipped the switch, because I know exactly what play you're talking about. He gets back. Did he either get a block or I can't remember what it was, but he defended it at the rim. Yeah. Like you said, it led to a fast break bucket when it even 2 games ago or 1 game ago, that would have ended in a Spurs bucket.
Yeah, and I just think, yes, there was still some Cat complaining, but he was really playing under control and just taking his time. And when he does that, Riley, he's dangerous, especially in San Antonio, where he has absolutely shot the lights out. 24-10 through 3 quarters, right? That's absolutely nasty. And then on top of it, got to give Cat his love. This is another crazy stat, and Jim P was on it last night, and so was Grady. 245 career 2010 games for Cat. 47% of his games. Only Giannis and Joker have had more. That's elite since getting drafted in 2015, right?
Yeah, not a lot of people pay attention to that, and I get to a certain extent because a lot of it is some say empty calories, empty stats in quotations, because they weren't leading to a lot of wins. But man, it's tough to win when, no disrespect to some of the players that Cat was playing with, but that 2019 team, Travion Graham being your starting small forward or power forward, whatever he played, like those were some tough teams, like a rookie Jarrett Culver, and Cat's supposed to win with those squads. Like his third best player was Josh Okogie behind Andrew Wiggins. Like there just wasn't a lot of talent on those teams. And so yeah, Cat's putting up great numbers, but that's why they weren't leading to wins. But now that he's got a supporting cast, and I get he's no longer the alpha per se on this team, but shout out to Cat. I mean, he's starting to figure it out. That's why we didn't like do a super overreaction video of like trade packages that we could do. It's like, for one, the Wolves aren't going to trade him at his lowest value, but he also fits with Ant and he wants to be in Minnesota. That's the biggest thing, right? Is like star players that want to be in Minnesota, you got to keep them there.
Yeah, and it wasn't the best game from Nas tonight. So the ability for Cat to really step up in a game like tonight was huge. But also kind of want to talk a little bit, transition, and then we can maybe come back to Cat. But Shake Milton's really impressing me, Rye. I mean, hits that nice corner three. Even on the miss that he had from the corner on that nice dish from Ant, it still looked money. I mean, he's given really nice minutes. And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker coming into this game, Rye, was 5 of 20 from deep. He looked confident. He had a nice step back in the fourth quarter. If not, Shake can play like this, Riley, coming off the bench with Kyle Anderson and Nas, goodness gracious,
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I have that on my sheet here. I have Nah and Shake together, and then right under that, bench as a whole. It was really good. They only had 4 guys that played off the bench. Nas, hopefully he didn't get too badly injured. Hopefully that neck, we're still waiting for results on that. Haven't seen anything on it. But overall, really good bench game. And for a guy who struggled as much as Nah did at the beginning of the season, like you said, he does look super confident out there. He looks like a true backup point guard, even though he's more of a combo guard by trade. But if Nah and Shake are playing like this, it's going to be really tough to beat the Wolves because they can provide valuable minutes while Ant rests or next to Ant while, say, Mike rests or someone or Jaden rests, right? Like while these other wing/guards are starters that are resting. Like if they can come in and not really miss a beat, that's crucial for the Wolves. Like I think everybody but Nas was plus off the bench, or Shake. I think it was Shake was 0 net rating, and then everybody else was plus off the bench. Like that's a good game from the bench.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have much more on kind of anybody else. Jaden covered a couple of my props, but he kind of had a quiet game. But I just want to talk a little bit about how he gets in passing lanes. I mean, it is freakishly insane that he can deflect and then go and get you a bucket and change a game just in a split second. But he's got to work on his foul trouble a little bit, Rye. What are your thoughts on that? Maybe you want to dive into Jaden, but that was all I had on him tonight, really.
Yeah, he fouled out tonight, and that's not like a new thing. He's had foul trouble his first 3 years in the league as well, right? I think it's a combination of him not getting the respect he deserves, and the refs should maybe have a little bit of a looser whistle per se with him and not beep it right away as soon as they see some sort of contact or his arms getting in there, because he's a great defender, right? He's not overly fouling. So, but at the same time, he also has to know when to be smart. Like you can still play really good defense and not put yourself in jeopardy of picking up your third foul in the first quarter or fourth foul in the first half or third foul, at the end of the first half, whatever it may be, like he does. So I wish he would be a little bit smarter in that sense. But at the same time, I just don't think he gets a great whistle from the officials. I think they need to let him play a little more because he's always showing his hands too. Like he's not overly aggressive to the point where it's like kind of like when Ant was with that jump ball on Tatum. He's very lucky he didn't foul out on that, but great defense overall. But yeah, Jaden's just got to figure out a bit more, but he's playing well this year and the team as a whole is, so there's not really much to complain about. Although I will say, Mike, after we were gassing him up through all these episodes about only turning the ball over once, first possession of the Wolves season, and he has 4 TOs last night, but that was really the only bad thing I saw.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had 2 turnovers in the first half, which is unlike him, but he had some big buckets, so he's not a liability yet. He might be, but right now, Mike Conley, I'm fine with him. But I think we got to talk about Ant, dude. I mean, this guy is absolutely playing at just a unique level for Minnesota right now, man. Next level. I mean, leading in scoring, leading in rebounding outside of Rudy Gobert, and leading in assists. 5 games this year. Ant has led an assist. Do you want to dive into Ant a little bit, Ryan?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that before we started filming this episode, how you can see the strides he's made as a scorer, right? Like the mid-range jumper is much better. Like it was always pretty when it went in, but his first three years in the league, he was shooting like 30-something% on mid-range jumpers. So yeah, like when that turnaround fade or whatever goes in, it's fantastic. But it wasn't going in as much as Finch would like it to, and it was probably making him tear his hair out thinking about it. But now he's knocking those down. Like his first 2 shots of the game, right, were both, or first 2 field goal makes of the game were both mid-range Jays. So he's become, a true 3-level scorer. But I think his biggest growth this year has been in the way he's able to move and pass the ball and see the right play. Now, the ball still gets sticky at times, which is totally fine, especially when he's on a heater. But last year, he wasn't seeing the right play. I think three times I counted him hitting Rudy for a dunk yesterday that he probably wouldn't have made last year. And that's going to pay dividends down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even remember him passing the ball to Rudy really at all last year. And that was without Cat for most of the season. But yeah, I want to really talk about kind of late in the first half, those back-to-back threes, and then he gets that tough bucket. Like after playing a first half where he's kind of trying to play make and get other people involved, when he needs to go and get buckets for this team, he goes and gets them. And then 41 straight games with a 3, 6th longest active streak. I mean, that's actually pretty impressive, but Steph at 254 or something like that. Oh my goodness gracious. I mean, that's wild, right? When you really think about 254 games. So Ant still has a ways to go to reach Steph on that record there, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're talking about 4 straight seasons essentially of making a 3-pointer for Curry there. But yeah, overall great game by Ant. I do like how you mentioned at the end of the first half there, he went on that little 8-0 burst by himself for 8 points within a few minutes stretch there. The 2 threes, one of them in Wemby's face, which love that. Top of the key, little step back. But that bucket, you're right. I mean, that was MJ-esque, the up and under. Wemby looked like he had a clear block.
First.
I was watching that back this morning, and I was listening to the Spurs broadcast while watching Ant's highlights from yesterday, and they just sounded demoralized. Like that's demoralizing, right? Like they play such a good half, had a lead for most of the first half, right? The Spurs were up, and then Ant hits a 3, gets himself going, hits a little bit of a step back 3 on Wemby, and then gets an up and under layup to go. It's like, well, just like that, the Wolves are leading, and it's just demoralizes teams.
Yeah, and then kind of the last things that I want to talk about: 0 fouls for Cat and Ant through 3 quarters. That's an underrated stat. If they can stay out of foul trouble, because Ant was in foul trouble against Boston. Great coaching, great, to be able to work through that in overtime. But having 0 fouls for both those guys, fantastic. And then my last point before I kick it over to you to end the episode. 2 minutes left in the third. Trey Jones gets an absolute breakaway opportunity. And I was hoping that he was going to throw it down. Can Trey Jones dunk the basketball? I mean, that's a legit question. I know Tyus can throw it down, but Trey Jones literally went up. I mean, perfect opportunity to go up and just yam it. Can that guy dunk? Minnesota guy, can he dunk?
I'm not entirely sure. I was trying to think back of his 2 years at Duke, if I ever saw him throw it down. I feel like I have seen him, but I know what you're talking about. He did that little, right-handed lay on the left side, where the play or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe he can, because
throw that down, Trey.
Mike's done that a lot this year, where he's laid it up on fast breaks where he was left alone, and I get that's because he's 37 and maybe the knees aren't working quite right. But it wasn't that long ago. I had just read an article about how Mike had gotten up in practice and slung one down, and the whole gym went crazy. So I was hoping Mike would maybe do that on one of his breakaways, but he just decided to lay it in. But yeah, overall, fantastic game. One last thing I do want to touch on. Devin Vassell got his. A lot of respect for him as a player. But contained Keldon Johnson. Not a good game for him. Very inefficient from the floor. I think he only had 6 points. So shout out to Ant and Jaden for containing him. Devin Vassell had a really good game, but it wasn't like they were cooking, or he was cooking Ant and Jaden. He was just making tough shots, right? It's the NBA. People are going to make tough shots. Sometimes you're going to have to live with it. But overall, nice gritty win on the road. First road win of the season, which you alluded to at the beginning. But I think that's all we have for this episode. We appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning into the props, tuning into the breakdowns, and we'll be back tomorrow with another episode.